The emptiness of space was an illusion, silent on the surface, yet filled with invisible echoes of ancient wars, buried secrets, and lost civilizations. That's what made Ganymede Prime different from other human colonies. Its silence ran deeper, as if the planet itself hid something no one dared to uncover. That night, however, the silence was shattered. First, a nearly imperceptible vibration in the upper orbit. Then, the sky lit up with green and golden flashes, a fleet of ships emerging from hyperspace like predators emerging from the darkness. Ganymede was unprepared, and for the first time, the future felt uncertain. In the station's command center, Captain Alara Voss stared at the hologram in front of her, where a projection of the invading ships expanded rapidly. The contours of the alien structures were sleek yet oppressive, with a pulsating glow that seemed alive. Alara, a former elite pilot and now leader of one of the most advanced colonies, felt the weight of the moment. "How many?" she asked firmly. Damon Reeve, the chief engineer and the brain behind most of the colony's technological innovations, answered without lifting his eyes from the panel. "Over 100 ships identified. No response to our contact attempts." Alara took a deep breath. The enemy's silence was as threatening as their presence. Meanwhile, beneath Ganymede's surface, Kai Draven led a group of soldiers through an improvised training session. A former mercenary, known for surviving where no one else could, Kai carried the scars of a life dedicated to combat. When the alarms blared, he looked up with an ironic smile. "Knew something was going to go wrong today," he muttered, grabbing his old plasma blade. One of the younger soldiers asked, "Who are they?" Kai responded with a tone that was half sarcastic, half serious. "Doesn't matter. If they're here, they want something. And that means they're not leaving without a fight." He knew that what was coming wouldn't just be a battle, it would be a fight for survival. In Ganymede's sky, the first explosions lit up the void. Small human ships tried to resist but were quickly obliterated. Damon's hands tightened on the controls in the command room, trying to redistribute energy to the shields. "The attacks are targeted. They know exactly where we're vulnerable," he said, his voice tense. Alara looked at the hologram again, studying the enemy formation. "This isn't a random attack," she said. "They're here for something specific." The station's artificial intelligence, Nyx, interrupted with its monotone yet strangely calm voice. Defense protocol activated. Analyzing enemy patterns. Alara felt a chill. The AI rarely acted on its own unless the situation was critical. And for the first time, it seemed even human technology might not be enough. As chaos spread, Ganymede's surface transformed into a scene of desperation. Civilians ran for shelter, evacuation ships were hastily prepared, and the horizon glowed with flashes of fire and energy. Amid the confusion, a small girl held her mother's hand, looking up at the sky. "They'll save us, won't they?" she asked, her voice trembling. No one answered. Humanity had reached the stars to expand its horizons. But that night, on Ganymede, the price of ambition became clear. And as Alara issued her orders and Kai readied himself for battle, one thing was certain. Ganymede's silence would never be the same again. The first enemy ships tore through Ganymede Prime's outer defenses like blades slicing through paper. The colony's orbital shields, designed to withstand meteor impacts and space pirates, proved nearly useless against the invaders' advanced technology. Beams of energy cut through the void, striking the surface and triggering explosions that reverberated through the underground tunnels. In the command center, Alara Voss issued rapid and precise orders as Damon struggled to stabilize the defensive systems. "Deactivate the external communication network and redirect the power to local shields," Alara ordered. Damon hesitated. "That will leave us completely isolated." Alara nodded, her eyes fixed on the hologram. "If we don't, we'll be dead before anyone can respond." Underground, Kai Draven and his team felt the first impact as a distant explosion shook the tunnel where they were stationed. Dust fell from the ceiling, and one soldier stumbled, grabbing the wall for support. "What was that?" he asked nervously. Kai checked his weapon before answering, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Sounds like someone trying to kill us." The group chuckled briefly, but the tension was palpable. They knew the invaders would reach the tunnels soon enough. Kai activated his communicator. Voss, we're ready to hold the line. But if you've got any tricks up your sleeve, now would be a good time. Alera's response came almost immediately. No tricks, Draven. Just hold. They cannot reach the core. The mission was clear, but no one expected to make it out alive. In space, the few remaining human ships attempted to create a distraction, attacking the enemy fleet with courage that bordered on desperation. Inexperienced pilots executed risky maneuvers, using the debris of destroyed ships as cover. One of them, the Corvus, managed to get close enough to an enemy ship to plant an explosive charge on a vulnerable point. The explosion was a brilliant spectacle, but short-lived. Before they could celebrate, the Corvus was destroyed by a swarm of enemy drones. In the command room, Damon muttered, "They learn fast. Every mistake we make becomes their advantage." Alera agreed, but her voice was firm. "Then we won't make any more mistakes." The invaders were methodical, almost like an elemental force. Their biomechanical ships seemed to adapt to the environment, creating attack patterns that defied human logic. Damon finally gathered enough data to project their movements. "They're testing our defenses," he said, pointing to the hologram. "They don't just want to destroy Ganymede. They want to understand how we fight." Alera felt a chill run down her spine. "Then let's show them something they won't expect." She activated a special command, redirecting the colony's automated mining ships to the outer zones, creating an improvised barrier. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it would buy time, and time was all they had. In the tunnels, hand-to-hand combat began. The alien creatures, a fusion of flesh and metal, advanced in coordinated formations, their weapons firing energy bursts that ricocheted off the walls. Kai led the counterattack with a ferocity that inspired his men. He hurled a plasma grenade into the middle of the enemy group, creating an explosion that lit up the tunnel. "Is that all you've got?" he shouted, just before a fragment struck him in the shoulder. Even injured, Kai stood his ground. "If we fall back now, it's over." His soldiers fought with desperate determination, knowing they were facing something far beyond their comprehension. In the command room, Nix made an unexpected announcement. "Full analysis complete. Enemy technology suggests extraplanetary origin, not only advanced but based on adaptive biological systems. Recommendation: avoid prolonged engagements." Damon frowned. "Is she saying we should retreat? We have nowhere to go." Alera ignored the suggestion, focusing on the hologram. "If their technology is adaptive, maybe we can overload it." "Damon, can you create a targeted electromagnetic pulse?" Damon looked at her incredulously. "That'll fry our systems too." Alera took a deep breath. "It doesn't matter. If we don't stop them now, nothing else will matter." With time running out, the plan was set in motion. Damon worked frantically to redirect energy from the station's reactors, while Alera coordinated the remaining defenses. In the tunnels, Kai and his men were ordered to retreat to avoid being caught in the pulse. "So this is how it ends?" a breathless soldier asked. Kai shook his head. "It doesn't end. We're just buying a few more minutes." When the pulse was finally activated, a wave of energy swept across the surface and through the tunnels, temporarily disabling the alien units. Silence returned, but it wasn't over. The first wave had been contained, but the next would be even more devastating. The silence following the electromagnetic pulse was unsettling. It wasn't the calm of victory, but an eerie void, as if the enemy were retreating only to reorganize. Alera Voss stared at the central hologram, now displaying the wreckage of alien ships drifting in Ganymede's orbit. "Was it enough?" Damon asked, his skepticism evident. Before Alera could reply, Nix's voice cut through, sharp and precise. "Anomaly detected. Alien energy signatures remain active." The hologram revealed something even more terrifying. The wreckage was reassembling itself. Entire ships were regenerating like living organisms. The pulse hadn't defeated them, it had only made them evolve. In the underground tunnels, Kai Draven and his soldiers checked the local systems, trying to understand what had happened. "Have they stopped?" one of the men asked, his voice tinged with hope. Kai shook his head, pointing at the remains of an enemy unit. The metallic body began twitching, small filaments of blue light pulsing through its structure. "This isn't an ordinary machine," he said, crushing the glowing core with his plasma blade. "These things don't die. They adapt." Kai activated his communicator to Alara. "Voss, whatever you did, I think you just made them angrier." As Damon analyzed Nyx's data, something caught his attention. "They're not attacking randomly," he said, enlarging a holographic image of the surface. "They're focusing on specific areas of the colony. It looks coordinated." Alara narrowed her eyes. "Coordinated by what? They don't have a visible mothership." Damon hesitated before answering. "What if they don't need one? What if their structure functions as a collective mind?" The hypothesis was terrifying but logical. The invaders weren't just a fleet. They were a single organism, with each part working in harmony. This revelation added a new layer of urgency to the battle. Alara knew that unless they could disable the core of the alien structure, they stood no chance. "What about what they're after?" she asked, looking at Damon. He avoided her gaze but finally responded. "I think I know." He projected a map of the colony, highlighting the underground energy core. This area was built over an ancient cavern discovered during Ganymede's terraforming. "We never fully explored it, but records show unusual energy readings." Alara crossed her arms, irritated. "So you're telling me we're sitting on something they want?" Damon nodded. "And from what we can tell, they won't stop until they get it." In the tunnels, the situation worsened. The alien creatures began reorganizing their forces, using collapsed passages to create alternative routes. Kai led a small expedition to the energy core, hoping to find answers. What he saw left him speechless. At the center of the cavern, a massive, pulsating structure seemed embedded in the ground. It was unlike any human technology, glowing with the same blue light emanating from the invaders. One of the soldiers stepped closer but was stopped by Kai. "Don't touch that. Whatever it is, it's calling them." Kai activated his communicator. "Voss, we've got a problem. Whatever they're looking for is right here." Alara listened to the message with a heavy heart. Nyx confirmed Kai's suspicions. Underground structure composed of unknown material. Possible connection to alien technology. Alara glared at Damon, who seemed lost in thought. "Why don't we know about this?" she demanded. Damon answered hesitantly. The data was withheld by the colony's previous administration. Maybe they thought it was better not to mess with something they didn't understand. Alara slammed her fist against the control panel. "Well, now we know, and we're paying the price for it." The invaders, realizing the humans had discovered their structure, intensified their attacks. In the tunnels, Kai and his team were surrounded, their weapons nearly useless against the growing number of enemies. "We're running out of options, Captain," he shouted through the communicator. Alara knew she had to act quickly. "Hold on, Kai. Reinforcements are on the way." But she knew help might not arrive in time. The line between survival and extinction was growing thinner by the second. The topic concludes with Alara making a bold decision: to use the underground structure as a weapon against the invaders. "If it's calling them, maybe we can use it to drive them away," she said. Damon looked at her, surprised. "You want to activate something we don't even understand?" Alara nodded, her voice filled with determination. "If we don't, we're dead anyway. And as I see it, we've got nothing left to lose." The plan began to take shape, but no one knew whether it would save Ganymede or lead to its ultimate destruction. The command room was steeped in tension as Alara Voss studied the hologram of the underground structure. "We have one shot, and only one, to turn this to our advantage," she said, her voice sharp. Damon Reeve looked at her, torn between loyalty and skepticism. "Captain, activating that structure could destroy us as much as them. We don't know what it does." Alara knew he was right, but she also knew that hesitation meant defeat. "And we won't know until we try. Damon, this isn't just about Ganymede. If we fall here, they'll move on to Earth. This is bigger than all of us." It was a sacrifice no one wanted to make, but one that might be inevitable. In the tunnels, Kai Draven and his team were under increasing pressure. The alien creatures had found a way to cross the collapsed passages, using their own forms to create biological bridges and alternate routes. "These things just don't stop," muttered one of the soldiers, exhausted. Kai gritted his teeth, firing at an approaching creature. "It's because they can't stop. Whatever they're after is important enough for them to die for it." Even as he fought, Kai knew time was running out. He activated his communicator. "Voss, we need to know what you're planning. Down here, we're running out of time and ammo." The response came firm but heavy. "Hold the line, Draven. We're about to change the game." Meanwhile, Damon and Nyx worked frantically to decode the alien technology within the underground structure. Each new discovery brought more questions than answers. "This thing isn't just a weapon or a power source," Damon said, projecting the data onto the hologram. "It's a key." Alara frowned. "A key to what?" Damon hesitated before responding. "I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's some kind of larger system. Something that connects all of this, the ships, the creatures, maybe even the entire fleet." Nyx interrupted with its cold, precise analysis. Likely conclusion: activating the structure may disrupt the enemy's neural network, but it could also reactivate it with greater intensity. Alara took a deep breath. It was a calculated risk, but the alternative was extinction. Tension escalated in the tunnels. Kai's forces were reduced to a small group, each soldier fighting with everything they had to protect the energy core. "We're running out of options. Captain," he shouted through the communicator as he struck down another creature with his plasma blade. One of the soldiers, wounded and breathless, looked at Kai. "Why are we still fighting? They just keep coming. Nothing we do matters." Kai grabbed the man by the shoulders, his gaze intense. "Because this is what we do. Because if we give up now, they win. And that's not happening while I'm here." Despite his bravado, Kai knew the resistance was nearly impossible. But he also knew that every second they bought was critical. In the command room, Alara and Damon finally activated the sequence needed to connect the alien structure to Ganymede's systems. Nyx initiated the protocols with eerie efficiency, while the central hologram displayed a series of symbols and patterns that seemed almost alive. Damon watched the numbers flashing on the console. "If this goes wrong, there's no coming back." Alara responded without hesitation. "Then it better go right." The sequence began, and a wave of energy pulsed through the underground structure, like a giant heart awakening. At that moment, the invaders froze. The creatures stood still, as if connected to something far greater. The structure was working, but no one knew for how long. In the tunnels, Kai and his team watched in awe as the invaders began to retreat slowly, as if called back by some unseen force. "What the hell is happening?" one of the soldiers asked. Kai had no answers, but he knew something had shifted. He activated his communicator. "Voss, whatever you did, it seems to be working." But before he could finish, a new wave of energy surged through the tunnels, shaking the ground and knocking several soldiers off their feet. The structure was overloading. In space, the enemy ships began to disintegrate, but some were desperately trying to reach Ganymede's surface. It was controlled chaos, but everyone knew the victory was still uncertain. The moment of decision arrived. The structure was nearing a critical state, and Damon warned Alara. "If we keep going, we're going to lose the entire station." Alara looked at him, her face serious but resolute. "If we stop now, they'll reorganize. We can't take that risk." Damon hesitated before asking the question everyone feared. "Are you ready to sacrifice Ganymede?" Alara didn't answer immediately, but her expression said it all. "If it saves humanity, then yes." She activated the final protocol, knowing there was no turning back. The sacrifice of Ganymede would be remembered as the moment humanity faced the impossible, and didn't back down. The entire station shook. Each wave of energy released by the underground structure pushed Ganymede's systems closer to total collapse. In the command room, Alara Voss stood firm, even as lights flickered and sparks burst from the panels. Damon Reeve rushed from one station to another, trying to stabilize what little he could. "The main reactors are overloaded. We've got minutes before everything blows," he shouted. Alara nodded, her focus locked on the central hologram. The alien ships were disintegrating faster than before, but something caught her attention. A central ship, larger and more intricate, emerged from the wreckage as if it had been waiting for this moment to act. In the underground tunnels, Kai Draven and his men watched with relief as the invaders retreated. But the pause was brief. A deafening rumble echoed through the tunnels, followed by a vibration that knocked several soldiers to the ground. Kai struggled to his feet, his eyes narrowing on a distant point. "That's not a natural collapse," he muttered. Through the dust, a massive silhouette emerged. A new type of alien creature, more advanced and monstrous than anything they had faced before. "Alara, we've got a problem," he shouted into the communicator. "Looks like they've sent the boss to the party." Alara's response was quick. "Hold them off as long as you can. We're almost there." As Damon worked desperately to prevent system failure, Nix made an unexpected announcement. Updated analysis. Alien entity detected on the surface. Likely neural network leader. Alara spun toward the hologram, which now displayed a massive humanoid figure moving toward the underground structure. "They know we're trying to shut the structure down." "This is a direct response," Damon said, still catching his breath. Alara activated her communicator. "Kai, that thing cannot reach the structure. If it does, we lose everything. Do whatever it takes." Kai laughed despite the tension. "You always save the easy jobs for me, don't you?" It was forced humor, but it was all he had at the moment. The final battle in the tunnels was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The alien creature seemed to learn from every move, anticipating attacks and adapting to Kai and his team's tactics. Their plasma weapons barely scratched its gleaming armor, and the number of human soldiers dwindled rapidly. Wounded and exhausted, Kai realized they couldn't win in a direct fight. "Change of plans," he shouted. "We're taking this thing straight to the core." The few remaining soldiers hesitated but followed their leader. The plan was simple. Use the core's overload as a trap to eliminate the creature. It was suicide, but there was no other choice. On the surface, Alara faced her own dilemma. The central alien ship was closing in on the station, deploying small drones that infiltrated Ganymede's systems. Damon fought to keep the automated defenses operational, but resources were depleted. "Admiral Rourke, we need immediate support," Alara called through the communicator. On the other end, Rourke's voice was grim but resolute. "We're on our way, but we're far out. You'll need to hold a little longer." Alara knew those words were an understatement. They were alone. "Damon, divert all remaining energy to the external cannons. Let's give them everything we've got." Damon hesitated but complied. It was a desperate measure, but desperation was all they had left. In the tunnels, Kai's trap was nearly ready. He and the remaining soldiers placed explosives around the core, ready to detonate them as soon as the alien creature got close enough. "Voss, I hope you've got a plan for after this, because I don't think I'm walking out of here in one piece," Kai said through the communicator, his voice weary but resolute. Alara responded immediately. "I know you don't need to hear this, but..." "Thank you, Draven," Kai smiled, even as blood trickled down his face. "You're welcome. Now let me go save the day." He activated the explosives at the exact moment the creature reached the core. The explosion was massive, flooding the tunnels with a blinding light. Kai's sacrifice delivered the final blow needed to halt the invasion. On the surface, the tunnel explosion triggered a collapse that destroyed the alien structure. The impact instantly disabled the central ship, which disintegrated into pieces before reaching Ganymede. Damon watched the data on the hologram with wide eyes. It worked. They're disconnected. Alara didn't respond immediately, simply observing the alien fleet retreating slowly, their remaining ships vanishing into hyperspace. The command room fell silent. Ganymede had survived, but no one celebrated. The cost of victory was far too high to ignore. The story ends with Alara receiving confirmation of Kai and his team's deaths. She looked at the hologram of Ganymede's system, now reduced to rubble, and murmured to herself, "They tested us and we held the line. But this isn't over." Damon approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We won, Captain." She shook her head. "We won today, Damon, but they'll be back. And next time, we won't have Ganymede to protect us." It was a bitter victory, but one that left humanity with a lasting lesson for the battles yet to come. The sky above Ganymede Prime was a graveyard of lights. Debris floated in the planet's orbit, while the surface was scarred with craters, ruins, and smoke. Transmissions from the Aurora began to come through, but Alara Voss found no solace in the voices confirming their victory. Damon Reeve remained at the console, processing the remaining data from the alien structure. "Their signals have completely disappeared," he said, his voice tired but relieved. Nyx, however, interrupted the brief moment of relief with its precise analysis. Preliminary conclusion: retreat does not equate to surrender. Enemy likely in regrouping phase. Alara stared at the hologram. She knew the battle was over, but the war was far from finished. In the underground tunnels, rescue teams searched the wreckage for survivors. Kai Draven and his team were found near the core, or what remained of it. None of them had survived, but what the team discovered was enough to inspire the rescuers. The alien creature's body was deactivated, its imposing form reduced to fragments. One of the rescuers touched the still glowing armor and said, "He did it. They really did it." The news reached the command room, where Damon reported Kai's sacrifice. Alara closed her eyes for a moment, swallowing her grief. He knew what was at stake. They all did. "We'll never forget this." As the evacuated civilians were transported to orbital ships, discussions aboard the Aurora began. Admiral Rourke, visibly shaken by Ganymede's destruction, gathered the remaining leaders to discuss the next steps. What we faced here wasn't just an invasion. It was a test. They were evaluating our defenses, our weaknesses. We need to prepare for what's coming next. Alara, still connected to the meeting via holographic channel, interrupted. "Preparing isn't enough. We need to study this to understand who or what we're up against." She glanced at Damon, who nodded, aware of the weight of the task ahead. Humanity needed to unite or it would be destroyed. The destroyed alien structure still held secrets. Before it was deactivated, Damon had managed to recover fragments of data revealing distant coordinates far beyond known human space. "These data points show an origin," he explained to Alara. "Wherever they came from, it started here." Alara examined the coordinates on the hologram. "This isn't an endpoint. It's the beginning." Nyx offered its analysis. Recommendation: deploy an expeditionary force for investigation. Identify threats before future attacks. Damon frowned. "Send who? We barely have the resources to defend ourselves." Alara gazed at the hologram, a spark of determination in her eyes. "We'll find a way." On the surface, the last civilians left Ganymede as Alara prepared to evacuate the station. She stood by the command room's window, looking out at the devastation that now defined the colony once celebrated as a jewel of human expansion. "Ganymede was a symbol of achievement," she said to Damon. "Now it's a reminder of how quickly it can all fall apart." Damon stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But it's also a symbol of resistance. What we did here will echo across humanity." Alara didn't respond immediately, but in her heart, she knew he was right. The destruction of Ganymede wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something greater. The story ends with Alara aboard the Aurora, watching Ganymede disappear in the distance as the ship entered hyperspace. She turned to Damon and said, "They thought they could break us. But if we learned anything today, it's that we're not easy to defeat." Damon smiled, despite his exhaustion. "And what do we do now?" Alara looked toward the horizon of space, her gaze resolute. "Now we fight again, but this time on our terms." Silence fell as the Aurora accelerated toward its destination, carrying with it not just survivors, but the promise that humanity would never give up. The Ganymede system was in ruins. Where one of humanity's most advanced colonies once stood, there were now only wreckage and echoes of a devastating battle. For the survivors aboard the Aurora and the evacuation ships, the silence was both a relief and a burden. They had survived, but not without paying a heavy price. On the Aurora's bridge, Alara Voss watched the reports come in waves. Civilian casualties, fallen soldiers, compromised systems. Damon Reeve approached, holding a datapad with the final numbers. "It was close," he said, trying to find some comfort in the words. Alara nodded but kept her eyes fixed on the window. She knew that close wouldn't be enough next time. As the last of the rescued were brought to safety, Admiral Rourke called a meeting with the remaining leaders. Ganymede wasn't just a battle. It was a message, he began, his voice firm but grim. They wanted to break us, to show us we're vulnerable. And, for a moment, they succeeded. There were murmurs in the room, but Rourke raised his hand for silence. But don't underestimate what happened here. We fought, we resisted, and we won. They know that. And now it's up to us to decide how we respond. Alara's gaze met Rourke's, and she spoke for the first time in the meeting. We can't just wait for them. We need to go to them, to understand who they are. And, if necessary, fight on our own terms. Kai Draven's sacrifice, along with that of his team, was widely acknowledged. But for Alara, it was personal. Back in the command room, she replayed their last moments of communication. Every word, every gesture seemed etched into her memory. Damon found her lost in thought and asked, "Do you think he knew what this meant? What he did for all of us?" Alara took a deep breath before answering. He knew. Kai always knew we were fighting for something bigger. And he did what all of us should be willing to do. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant hum of the Aurora's engines as it moved through the void of space. The sacrifices would not be in vain. The fragments of data recovered from the alien structure offered more questions than answers. Damon presented his initial analysis to Alara and Rourke. These coordinates lead to a distant system, far beyond the range of known human space. If they came from there, it's likely there are more of them. Rourke pondered the implications for a moment. It's a huge risk. We don't know what we'll find. Alara replied firmly, and if we do nothing, they'll find us first. There was a silent consensus. The decision to explore these coordinates wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. It was the only way to understand the threat and prepare for what lay ahead. As the Aurora and the evacuation ships left the Ganymede system behind, Alara made one final transmission to the human colonies. "This is Captain Alara Voss, speaking from Ganymede. Today we faced the impossible. We lost friends, family, and a part of who we are. But we won, and it wasn't luck. It was the courage of those who fought, knowing they might not survive. The fight for Ganymede is over, but the war has just begun. Humanity will not retreat. Never." Her words echoed across human space, inspiring a new wave of determination among the colonies. The resistance had begun, and nothing would stop them from fighting for their future. The final scene showed Alara on the bridge of the Aurora, with Damon by her side. The stars shone ahead, but to Alara, they felt more distant than ever. Damon asked, "Where do we go now?" Alara replied without hesitation, "To where they are. It's time to change the rules." The Aurora entered hyperspace, vanishing into the vastness of the universe. In the emptiness, one thing remained certain. Humanity was far from defeated.